Yo, 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 what is going on, IK fam? BN, I'm back again today for another dope IK video, and I'm pretty excited to share with you, finally, an update on the Alliance vs. Alliance game mode that IK just gave us some more official information on. Now, you can see here the cross-server alliance battlefield slash illusion battlefield is under construction, and they're releasing some more details. Now we're going to go over this, and I'm also going to share with you my thoughts and opinions on some of them, because some of these things can impact, in my opinion, server health and longevity in a few ways. Now, before we dive in, of course, if you enjoy the content, sub to the channel, give us a thumbs up, hit that notification bell to get updates on when we have new content coming out, which is usually Monday through Fridays, and then, of course, sometimes on the weekends, if I find time. And then lastly, in the description down below the video, you can find official Infinity Kingdom resources, along with a creator game download link that helps support us. And then if you want to join our Discord, you're more than welcome to. And or our Jump project, of course, that is still going on as well. Now, let's dive in. Only chosen alliances can enter the illusion battlefield. What's the schedule? The entrance to the battlefield will open once every 2 weeks on servers that have been running for 30 days slash are 30 days old. Eligibility. Registration starts at 00 UTC, which is at reset, on the Friday before the battle weekend. Now, alliances can register. Now, what this essentially means is that, like, let's say, I'll just give an example here. Let's say it's Friday the 16th, and or let's just say the battle weekend's next weekend, right? So you have 24th and 25th, registrations on the 23rd. Pretty simple. Now, alliances can register if they are among the 20 most powerful on the server. This is very key here because this means overall power, not faction power. And have at least 40 members who have signed into the game over the past 3 days, right? So this makes it seem as though it's going to be a 40 versus 40 format. It's a little higher than what I'm used to seeing, at least compared to something like Rock, where you're able, where you have about a little less than that. And then, of course, I'm sure other games as well, if there's any others that do around 40. So just something to note. Now, on the registration part, only the alliance leader can complete registration. To do so, of course, yes, that was my yawn pause, the alliance leader must list 40 participants, and then you can also assign up to 20 subs. So you can have a roster of 60 with 40 actives and then 20 subs. And then you choose from one of the designated battle times on the Saturday or Sunday. Now, the reason I think this is important, and I actually think this is a win overall, is really for two reasons. One, because on a typical work week, you usually would have your busier days being a Monday through Friday. Saturday and Sunday are more generally concerned, at least from my understanding in the Western world, if not other places as well, as your days off. And so I think with that in mind, they're trying to target and to try and have the game mode be as active as possible by factoring in those days off, which I think is a great move. Especially if it converts. And then the second reason, I think, is because from having those days off, I think there's just a higher chance on the weekend that you would usually have higher player activity in general as well. That I think part of it comes with that, and then I think part of it is just the more general free time as well. And so again, that could be from if you have just additional work you have to do after your job during the week, that you're just not able to really do any kind of gaming during the weekdays, and then usually you just have more free time during the weekend. Whatever it may be, like I said, I think the choice for Saturday and Sunday is good, that they're really only focusing on 2 days out of the week compared to having it be 5 days, 5 game days, right, that they could do matches on. Then matchmaking portion. At 6 UTC on the Saturday, the system will match each alliance with the opponent closest in power. And this is measured by the total power of the 40 most powerful lords in each alliance, drawn from both participants and substitutes. Now, there's two key parts here. This means that you really need to know who most likely your 40 active participants are going to be. This is because, based on the wording, this means that, like, let's say your top 40 players are comprised of 30 actives and 10 subs, right? Even though your 40 players on your active list are not the strongest 40 players on your roster, you are going to get matched based on your top 40 power, right? That's on the roster that you submit. So that means that it's very important that you take the time to vet players and make sure that they are, at least you make sure that they're going to have a high chance, if not a guaranteed chance, of making it. So you can put them on your on your list, and then you only go off the subs, right? Because the one thing is, you wouldn't want to do it either way. You don't want to get matched higher in power if you just go on off default and you like, I'll just put my top 40 strongest players on my roster, and then if none of them, if they can't show up, I'll just pull from the subs. But the challenge is that if your subs are weaker than the players on your roster, then you're going to get matched, and you could get matched into a higher tier. This is why, or vice versa, in a lower tier. This is why it's extremely important to make sure that you have communication with your participants, right? Whether it's on Discord, another kind of social media app, where you're confirming with them in game if they are going to be able to make it, because that is really the list of 40 that you should submit before any substitutes, so you can have a high chance of making sure the majority, if not all of those players, can show up for the match, so you can get matched appropriately based on the power that you're submitting for your active roster. Now, the second part here is that this is really factoring into a standard AVA, and I want to talk about some of the potential effects that this can have on your server. Now, before I do dive in there, though, I do want to preface with some of my opinions on different ways I think that servers can play out AVAs. I really think there's about 4 that come to mind. The first one is if you're just going with a standard kind of mega alliance server structure. We've talked about this before, where you have one alliance that just front loads all the strongest players, the whales, right? Maybe you extend that to 2, but typically in most cases it's 1. And that alliance is the one that is like your main alliance team for your server as well, if they want to do that for AVA. Then, right, but we've talked about some of the cons, or some of the effects of what that can do for your server health and longevity when you front load like that in kind of a top 1% format. Then you have a second option. The second option, as I just wanted to mitigate my cough, is that you can split up your alliances. For example, you can front load, you can either go one alliance, or you can do one top alliance per faction. That would be another option if you wanted to do that. This would make it so that your players would not have to transition over to other factions. And this also saves those players 2k green gems, right? Now, outside of just front-loading players into the strongest alliance, you could do a rotation, which would be a third option, but that would cost your top 40 players on the server 2k green gems every time they wanted to leave the alliance that they were in for their home alliance or their starting alliance, and then do that every 2 weeks to then participate in AVA, right? So it would be costly and probably not the most effective. And then again, right, you do the faction one, where you just have one alliance in each faction that's like the main one, and then each of the faction, each one faction from each alliance would be like the hosting AVA alliance, that the 40 players, right, would just leave there, or any players that aren't in that alliance would just leave their current alliance, right? They only have to sacrifice the 15-minute cooldown period. They join that alliance, and then that is like the main faction alliance team or AVA team, and then you can have, academies or secondary teams, right, depending on how many people want to participate. The other way you could do it, which would be the fourth way, is you could just leave everything as is, and then hope that you can find 40 players in your alliances by the time the 30-day mark hits. Now, the reason I say this is important is because, and we're actually going to take a look here as well. I'm going to load this up in a moment, but the thing I want to take a look at is, and actually let me load this up on a side screen here. The reason I say it's important to know where you're at 30 days is because it's also going to factor in to the current alliance level of your alliance in the server that you're in at 30 days, right? And that factors into your member capacity. So let's say your member capacity at 30 days is maybe somewhere between 90 and 100, maybe 90 and 110, though I think probably more likely it's probably going to be somewhere around 90 to 100. I would imagine you're probably going to be somewhere at alliance level 5 or 6. And that also, even though, that's double the amount of active participants you have, you still would have to find 40 players in your alliance to participate. So from that point, you could just take alliances that are able to have 40, and then for ones that are close to hitting 40, right, you can just have players from other alliances that are way lower than having 40 actives, and they could join those alliances, right? So there's a couple ways that you can really do it and figure it out, but it is something that you have to factor in. The very last thing I'm going to touch on is the potential, I don't want to say damage, but the potential caution that I want to air to players. This is a fantastic game mode. And it is something, and again, I'm not saying that because, there's any particular details I know beyond this, but more of, I just like the idea of AVA, of game modes in these types of kingdom builder games. I think it just adds that pure kind of PvP element where if you really want to kind of figure out how to do PvP, you want to do a lot of testing, you want to help even prepare for some situations that you'll find out in server versus server when that mode comes out, right? This is a great place to do that, and also to kind of strut your stuff, do tactics, apply strategies. Right, this is something that I'll even be excited to participate in if I'm able to. Usually weekends are a little more difficult for me though. But the idea behind it is that you, and this is why I say kind of err with caution, you do not want your server to essentially be or become a server where all you do is focus on your AVA, and that's like the end all be all for your server. And the reason I say that is because SVS and any kind of server versus server, kingdom versus kingdom mode is by far the most important. Why do I say that? I say that because SVS and KVKs factor in every player in your server. AVAs, Alliance versus Alliance game modes, typically factor in 30 to 40, depending on the game, right, players for one alliance at minimum that would like to participate in it, right? So you're really looking at the minority. And most kingdoms are really gauged, their success and their longevity is viewed and again, as I said, gauged based on how well they perform in SVS, right, or in a KVK type format. AVA is great, but in my opinion, when it comes to the health of your server and looking at all the players that are in your server, it really comes second to SVS. So my err on the side of caution is, my opinion would be to not immediately think of, okay, well, I'm going to go into a server and, I'm not going to care about anyone else. It's just going to be my alliance there, and we're going to be the top dogs, and we're going to, try to focus on winning AVA all the time and be the top AVA team. Like, look, that's cool if you want to be the top AVA team, right? But at what cost will that come with for your AVA or, for your server, right? If you're just focusing on that and nothing else, and not the overall server health or the stability of the server, right? Because you're just, your alliance, you're front loading everything, your alliance is number one, you guys are winning all the events, right? These are things that, in my opinion, you have to think about. So, again, that's why I say err on the side of caution. I think this portion here in the video at the ending portion is probably the most important, that I really hope the majority of players will take away, because it's not just about what you're looking to do or what your alliance is looking to do in AVA, right? It's really about, do you want to still have player activity and player retention at the end of the day? Or are you really only focused on this? And like I said, there's multiple ways to run a server, multiple ways to manage a server. This is just my opinion on what I think overall. And, hopefully just some good food for thought, if you will, when it comes to this. But still excited, and I can't wait to start showing you guys some videos and content from AVA, especially if I'm able to participate, or at least get you some screenshots as well. And then, of course, I guess the last thing is I'm like really curious if they're going to add some kind of a spectating feature or viewing feature, or if they're going to highlight matches, or maybe even look for commentators. Man, God, that would be so cool. I totally would do some commentary on matches too. But anyways, outside of that, guys, that is it for me. I would love to hear what any of you think in the comments down below. Do you like some of the rules that they have? What do you think about it? Do you agree or disagree with any of the opinions I've shared? Anything and everything, please let me know. And then until next time, peace.